My name is Mickey Gates, and I am Justice of the Peace in Garland County and have been for 19 years. Over there until just a couple of years ago, I was in the minority party over there for many years. It seemed like every few years, when government has a problem with budget, you know what's always first on the table? We got to do the hard decision and raise taxes, and that seems like the mantra. But most of the people you hear that from is not the citizens. They're other elected officials and employees of a county. And until you start cutting budgets, and you've cut everywhere you can cut, you don't ever look at expanding government. In fact, I differ. Government is good at blowing things up. They blow up countries, they blow up buildings, and they blow up budgets. And I think about that, governments normally I have found to be the cause of many of our problems and not most of our solutions. Government has a tendency to get in the way of entrepreneurs and families. They have a tendency to get in the way of reasonable people trying to take care of their lives. I will say I was alarmed. I may not get y'all's endorsement should I have opposition, which I would love to have your endorsement, but I noticed on one of your things that you read that it says that we uphold all the laws. I will tell you now that if my company is forced by the federal government to provide and to comply with Obamacare, I will not. I will not.
That's an unlawful law.
Just because it's legal does not make it right. There is a time citizens must stand up and say, I will not.
That's right.
I applaud those businesses. I applaud Hobby Lobby for standing up. I applaud Focus on the Family and those people and those organizations that say we will not comply. No matter what you pass, we will shut our doors before we do, and I will do the same thing. I will not comply. And those are matters of conscience, and government cannot dictate to us our conscience. And it is, the Boston Tea Party, you look at that, you talk about rebel raisers. Now, those guys took somebody's private property and they destroyed it. But they had been pushed to a point where they said, we cannot endure this any longer. And we as a society, I was with Bob, I see Bob McCluskey back there. Fountain Lake, if you're in Fountain Lake School District, in Garland County, we passed a resolution basically reprimanding the state government trying to take Fountain Lake's money and hold them hijacked over there. And Saline County turned right around, passed the next night, I think, passed the same thing. I was over there at the legislature lobbying, trying to get the taxpayers' money back, because their idea was, y'all have too much. So let's take your tax money and give it to these less fortunate people. Well, guess what will happen? You take our tax money, we're going to lower our tax, and we're not going to give it to y'all. We have it for a reason. And so, it goes back to the basic principles of sovereignty and state rights and people being able to self-determine. And if we as a community determine that these are the rules and the regulations that we want to live by, how dare the federal government come and tell us more? And we have to be able to stand up with other rights. I'm running for a Bruce Westerman's seat in District 22. We have to join other conservative states in standing up against the federal government, saying we will not comply, period. We will not comply with not only Obamacare. I will just tell you something. In the last 19 years of being on the Court, we have to comply every year. Lanning will tell you, the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act that was passed 30-something years ago by David Pryor and Bumpers and those guys, are every few years a new part comes into compliance. It used to be if you disturbed 20 acres of land, you had to do this, and then it was 10, and then it was 5, and a couple of years ago it was 1. If you disturb 1, we spend in Garland County $330,000 in tax monies permitting stormwater permits and doing inspections this year that 5 years ago we didn't have to do, or did very little. Who do you think pays for that great idea? It's you and me. And at some point, we have to tell them, no. We have to say, not anymore, we're not going to do it. Bob McCluskey challenging, how dare a president of a school board stand up to the governor of the state of Arkansas and say no? How dare he? Well, how dare he? He represents the voters and the taxpayers of a school district, and you would be proud watching him over there doing what a bulldog, he's a bulldog, what a bulldog would do. He's got some great ideas in changing some of the laws that need to be changed. And the only way we're gonna do that is if we get enough people with enough gumption. I can just tell you, I thought my job as a JP was hard. I tell you what, I nearly cried right there just thinking about it. I have to deal with some issues, but I don't have to deal with that. That's tough. That's why we need people that will go in there and make those hard decisions, that are willing to stand up and say, I'll do that. I'll make those hard decisions. And if we can't support people, you know, one of the things that I think Manny said, we as conservatives, we have to quit always just looking at the perfect person. And we have to say, that guy is a great guy, he's qualified, but he can't win. Let's find this guy right here, he's electable. He's a good man, he's got quality, and I'm gonna agree with him 90% of the time. Because I can tell you, the guy that we agree with 90% of the time that wins is better than the guy I agree with 100% that loses. Because I can tell you, in fact, we need to quit asking people, how do you feel? How do you feel about taxes? How do you feel? Well, personally, in fact, when a politician says, I personally feel, I want to know, how will you vote? How do you feel about abortion? Well, I personally believe a life. I don't care how you feel. How will you vote? How do you feel about taxes? Well, personally, I think we pay enough taxes. What will you do? Let me tell you what happened in Garland County. A number of years ago, we asked for the Garland County voters to pass a tax to build a jail. And the taxpayers said, no, we don't like this proposition. And I will just tell you, I really didn't like it either. So we got ready to bring it back to again, and we came up with a better plan. And you know what they told us? What you have to do, Mickey, you have to make the hard decision. You need to tell people if they don't vote for this, that we're going to raise their property tax to pay for it. And I said, no, you don't have to tell them that. I said, what do you tell them? I said, if you don't want it, vote no. And we won't build a jail, and we'll continue to have over 10,000 warrants and not have a place to put them, so we won't arrest them and we won't put them in jail. But we're not going to try to press the people to do something they don't want to do with their own taxes and money. But if a community decides we want a bigger jail, then let the people decide for themselves if they want a bigger jail. If they want a storm shelter, or if they want a bigger school, let them vote on themselves whether they want that and at what rate they want it. And that we as communities get the right of self-determination. I can't imagine our founding fathers getting up there and saying, why don't we form a government that will get bigger and bigger and get more and more wild and take more and more rights away. And that was the fight all those years ago, was federal rights versus state rights. Because government further from the people becomes more and more unruly. And that is why I appreciate the people that go look at our state representatives and our state senators and say, we're here and we're looking. And by the way, we're going to go back and tell people how you voted. Nancy will, I tell you. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, she'll tell you. She'll be in your face. She'll tell you. And you know what? That's what we need. It's called accountability. And so I hope I don't have opposition. I've run for a long time without opposition. There's two ways to run for politicians, by the way: scared and unopposed. And I will do this. I know my time's up, but I have to read this one thing to you because this is really great. It's kind of sad. One sunny day in January 2017. This is 17. An elderly man approached the White House from across Pennsylvania Avenue where he had been sitting on a park bench. He spoke to a U.S. Marine standing guard. He said, young man, I would like to go in and meet with President Obama. The Marine looked at the man and said, sir, Mr. Obama is no longer president and no longer resides here. The elderly man said, okay, and walked away. The following day, the same man approached the White House and said to the very same Marine, young man, I'd like to go in and meet with President Obama. The Marine again told the man, sir, as I said yesterday, Mr. Obama is no longer president and no longer resides here. The man thanked him and walked away again. The third day, the same man walked up to the very same guard and said, young man, I'd like to go in and meet with President Obama. The Marine, understandably agitated at this point, looked at the man and said, "Sir, this is the third day in a row that I've told you Mr. Obama is no longer president and no longer resides here. What part of this do you not understand?" And the elderly man looked at the Marine and said with a smile, "Oh, I understand. I just like hearing it." With that, the Marine stood to attention and saluted and said, "I'll see you tomorrow."